In this lecture, we finally get to start programming. This first section of the course is kind of a review or refresher for students that have taken C# before, but even if you haven't, I will go at a slow enough pace for you to appreciate some of the key components that you need to understand for the remainder of the course. In this first lecture today, what I will do is introduce the concepts of labels, buttons, picture boxes, text boxes, and radio buttons, just to give you an overview of how you create a simple C# program. I'll give you the mechanics of how you start off the program, and I'll give you all the little details of where everything goes on your hard drive when you actually save it and run it. All right, I've started up C#, and if this is the first time you've ever used Visual Studio or programmed in C#, please follow along with me. If you've done this before, you can just watch and just, say, yeah, I remember that stuff, and, use it as a review. So these are the steps I almost always use when I create a project in C# Visual Studio. So I always go up here to File, New Project. And what I usually do is we're going to use this one almost 99% of the time. Later on near the end of the course, I'm going to introduce this also, but most of the time we're going to create Windows Form applications. Next thing down here in this section, make up a name for the program you're going to create. And since this is our first app, I'm going to call it First App. And this will be saved on your hard drive. Now, where? So that's the next part. What I'm going to do here is press Browse. And as I mentioned in a previous lecture, try to make a folder. I'm going to use this one right here, Lecture Demos, and I'm going to save all the programs I use or create in there. And then I press Select Folder. The rest of it is automatic. What it'll do now is it'll create a directory solution for you that'll have all the stuff, all the little components that make up a typical C# program using Visual Studio. We are basically ready to go. I'm going to press OK. And in a few seconds, you're going to see little things appear on the left-hand side of your screen and on the right-hand side of your screen. So let's explain each component, and then we're going to start programming. So over here on the left is your bread and butter. These are all the little tools that you're going to drag onto your form and create your C# program. That's the toolbox. Okay? Over here on the right-hand side, the first one is called the Explorer window, which gives you all the little bits and pieces that make up your program. We'll go into your hard drive later on and show you where they are also, but that gives you all the little bits and pieces. This is the most important one for us right now. This is the form you're looking at right here. Okay? Down at the bottom of the right-hand side is another very important section of the screen called the Properties. And what the properties are little things that you can change on the form you're looking at or the button. So we're going to be able to change the name of the form, the color, the size, and things like that. And that's all related to the Properties window. Now, if you ever lose any of these or they mysteriously disappear for some reason, like let's say the Solution Explorer disappears, you go, oh, I'm looking at his video and I don't see it. No problem. You go to View, and you press Solution Explorer and it'll come back. And that's true for any of these other components, that if you lose them, you should be able to go here and get them to come back. Okay, so there's Solution Explorer, there's the toolbox, and a number of other things that we may need later on in the course. Okay, now, first thing I always do when I create a program is I go over here to the form and I give it a nice name. Like Form 1 doesn't really tell me much. So there's going to be a convention that we're going to use, and we'll talk more about it in a few minutes. But I always name my forms FRM and then whatever I want to call my application. And obviously I called it First App. The computer's going to yell at you here in a second, and it's going to say, do you want to rename everything according to these rules? And always say yes. Okay, so now you notice not much of a change, but the form is now going to be called Form First. The next thing I'm going to do is go to Properties now, and there's that word Form 1 there. That's not very good. So I'm going to change the property called Text right here, and I'm going to call this First App. And in a second, when you click away, you should see the word First App there. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're changing the properties of the form. Let's, make it look a little nicer. So let's now go to, I think there's a back color property. So there's all kinds of properties you can change. And there's back color. I'm going to press it, press Custom, and just pick a light yellow color. All right, so what you're doing now is you're creating your first sort of project by changing properties. We haven't done any programming yet, but that'll come up in a few minutes. Okay, so that's enough for that one. Let's drag some stuff on the screen. We're going to talk a little bit about the most common controls today and try to give you a quick overview of how you can use them. So there's a bunch of stuff here. Label usually is used for like titles on your page or your form, so to speak. Now there it is right there, kind of empty looking, and I'm going to try to be consistent. Labels I'm always going to call LBL, and then this is going to be our title label. Second thing is I'm going to change the text property for that label, and I'm going to say welcome to my first program. Okay, and there it is right there. Now there is one property that's automatically set for labels that I want you to be aware of. It's called the auto size property true. If it was set to false, you could stretch this out, but you notice how the words only take up a certain part of it. Well, what the auto size does is it automatically makes it as big as the size of your words. Okay, so you may not appreciate that, you may not think that's a big deal, but anyway, that's what it does. Another thing, just to finish up labels, and I won't talk about them for the other ones, but you can change the font, size, color, whatever. Let's just change the size to 12, and it becomes a bigger font. Okay, and you can change the color too. There's all kinds of different things there that you can modify depending on what you want to do. Okay, so next. So that was called a label. Next most common thing that you'll see in a lot of computer programs is a text box. A text box is used for entering information, names, numbers, whatever. Okay, text boxes should always be called TXT and then whatever you want to call it. And you're going to, at this stage of the game, not appreciate them. In a few minutes you will. Like, who cares if you name them? Well, sometimes in programs you're going to refer to those controls and use them somewhere else. So if you don't remember a nice name for them, it's not going to be properly done in the program. Okay, so that one's going to be called text name. This one we're not going to put anything in it. Later on when we run our program, we're going to feed information in here. Okay, next thing is let's have some fun and put a picture in here. A picture is a picture box, and I'm going to do two of them just to show you the difference between the two. Picture boxes are always going to be called pick and then whatever. I'm going to call this one pick one. And I'm going to slide down to, because there's nothing there yet, the property called image. And oh, there's two things here. Let's try both of them. Let's stick with this one first, project resource file. Now I'm going to press import. Now you've got to go on your hard drive and look for a picture somewhere. I've got a folder called images. And I'll just go in here and grab something really quick. Okay, and then I'll press OK. Oh, I don't see it. Well, there's another property for picture boxes. It's too big for the size of our thing. So we're going to turn on the size mode stretch property, and there's our picture, and then I can make it bigger if I want. Now, what I want you to appreciate is something magically has happened over on the right-hand side of the screen. So this image from a resource file has gone in, and now there's a folder called resources, and there is actually the image. It's got a funny name, 0.jpg, but now that's stored locally on your hard drive in a special folder called resources, as opposed to the second way to load in picture boxes, which actually I like a little bit better. All right, it's up to you which way. Again, I'm going to have a picture box here. This one I'm going to call pick one. And again, or not pick one, pick two. We already called one pick one. And we're going to go to images again. And this time I'm going to pick local resource. And I got to go and find a picture. How about we'll pick this one here. And again, it's going to be too big for the screen. We'll turn on the stretch, and there it is. Now this one, I don't see it anywhere. I think it was called 8JPEG. What it's done is it saved it in this special resource file. It's almost like it's compressed in a sort of XML format. Let me just double click on this for a second. I'll show you. This is kind of not for you to view, but it's compressed in there, and that's where it's being stored. And it comes along. So if you had 7 or 8 pictures, they'd all be in there after, which is kind of different. All right, so either way will work. This one, you can obviously see it right in front of your face. This one here, it's more hidden in sort of in a special format and embedded. In all the images would be in there. Okay, let's continue. Let's do the next most common properties controls the famous button. That's your sort of your bread and butter that sort of activates things. And we'll do two buttons here. We'll throw a button there, and we'll throw a button there. Okay, and buttons, sticking with the convention I'm teaching you, are BTN, and this one's going to be button hello. And you won't see the word hello until you actually write the text, so I'll write down the word hello. All right, second button will be like goodbye or exit. Okay, so this one we're going to call BTN exit, and we'll actually type in the word exit. Okay, let's take a deep breath now, and we can press run if we want. And it's a little bit off screen. So the first thing is, and first of all, none of these buttons work. You could type your name in here if you want, but none of the buttons work. First thing I want to fix is I want it to go right in the middle of the screen. So another property, now watch, I'm not on these buttons or this or this. I'm basically on the form. That's something that students always mess up at the beginning when they're learning to program in C#. You have to be on what you're talking about before you go to properties. And then there's this thing called start position, and I'm going to put it center screen. So now let me just run this again. Okay, so it's more in the middle of the screen. All right, let's do some computer programming. To do some computer programming, we have to go into the underground, so to speak. So what you do is, if you want this to actually do something, you double click on it, and it brings you into the coding section of C#. Now, when you get placed, and some people are going to laugh at me because it seems obvious, but when I clicked on that button, it put me right here. So don't go walking around and start typing over here or up here. If you do that, you're going to mess things up. The computer puts you right where it's supposed to be. So don't start walking around. So right here, you're going to type in your first computer command. And the one we're going to type in is called a messagebox.show, and then bracket, and I'm just going to type in the word hello. Now it's getting mad at me because, and this is going to drive you crazy if you've never programmed in C# or C++ or Java, every command should end with a semicolon. If you don't do that, it's not going to work. Now, you're in the underground. How do I get back up? I'm getting kind of claustrophobic in here. Well, you press here, and then you're back into design view. Let's do the exit button. And notice again, it puts you where you're supposed to be. Exit is going to be this special command, this.close. Okay, and we're going to go back upstairs again. And let's try to run it this time. And this time it should do something. So when I press hello, it says hello. When I press exit, it exits. How about it says hello my name when I type my name in there? Because right now when I type my name in there, it just says hello, and this says exit. So how about when I type my name, I say hello, whatever my name is. Now this is where you had to remember what you called that text box. I called that text box text name, but that's not enough. Dot, oh, that's different. These are all the properties associated with the text box. So when I type in my name in there, that's the text property. Remember I told you, let's not fill it in right now? Well, now we're going to grab it when it gets done in real time when I'm running it. All right, let's give it a run and see what happens. So if I type in my name, this time when I press hello, it says hello, oh, Shirley, and it's kind of stuck together. I don't like that. Let's fix it. So see that little O? I'm going to press the space bar just to shift it over a little bit so that when I type in my name and I press hello, it says hello Shirley. So there we are. We're at the first stage. I'm going to finish up with some random little examples with radio buttons, and then we'll wrap it up. All right, a little bonus action. How about we fool around with the radio button for a second? Now I'm going to quickly throw a couple up here for a sec just to get you to appreciate what I'm talking about. And what I want you to appreciate is how they work first of all. So let me run. And radio buttons, basically when you press one it undoes the other. But what if these two radio buttons have nothing to do with these two? These are controlling something up above your program, and these are controlling something else. Well, watch what happens right now. These are all like one big happy family, but I don't want them to be that happy. I want these guys to have their own little world and these guys to have another. So let's get rid of all of these for a sec. Okay, and what we need to do when we work with radio buttons that are in separate little worlds, you may not necessarily have them as two separate things, but if you do, you have to use a group box. Okay, now group foxes are usually called GRP, and then whatever. So I'm going to call this group box mood. You'll see why in a second. Okay, and the next one we'll put down here, and this is just going to be for example. So this one here, I don't really care what I call it. It's not going to be crucial. I'm just going to call it GRP other. Now again, we should make this even more descriptive, so we'll call that moods. Okay, and now we're ready to throw in our radio buttons. So we're going to grab some radio buttons, and this one put there, another one here. This one here I'm not too concerned about, but I'll throw one in just to prove to you that it is going to work. Okay, and I'll name these in a second, but just let's run it for a second just to prove that it works. So these are in their own little world, and notice now these are on their own little world. But let's have them do something useful. All right, what I've done to speed up the process a little bit, I've obviously changed these radio buttons to the word happy and sad. I've put two images here, a happy picture and a sad one, and I've called them pick happy and pick sad. Okay, so what I want to do now is program it so that when I press sad, I get the sad face. When I press happy, I get the happy face. But right now I see them both. So the first thing I'm going to do is make them invisible. So you go and press the happy face, and there's a property called visible, and we'll make it false. And we'll turn this one off too. Now, there's going to be a little problem here, you'll see in a second, but at least it'll give you a taste for what's possible. So I'm going to press start. Yeah, they're not there. So when I press this now, I want one or the other to show up. All right, so let's double click here. And what we're going to do here is we're going to make pick happy, and I spelled it with a capital, pick happy dot visible equal to true. And pick sad dot visible equal to false. So I want the happy face to appear. Now I want the exact opposite to happen when I do the sad one. And I could just copy and paste this actually and just reverse the trues and falses. So in this one, basically the exact same command, but only this one is false and this one is true. And let's give it a try. Okay, so initially it'll have, there's the happy and there's the sad. All right, so there's kind of a neat application using radio buttons. Okay, to finish up this lecture, let's take a look at some nitty-gritty stuff which you may or may not be interested in. But just in case, we talked a little bit about some of this stuff, the resources. We talked about this is where those pictures are stored in a sort of a compressed format. What the heck is this? Let's go inside of this for a second. This is what's going on behind your back. In some languages, you actually have to hand type all this information and put it on the screen. Well, Visual Studio is kind of nice. It's kind of like the designer view. It actually places all this information for you behind your back when you're doing the nice dragging and dropping, but it's actually doing it. So that's a designer. Do you ever have to go in here? Very rarely, okay? But just nice to know that it was there. What I also want to show you is when you press run, a bunch of files are created and stored somewhere. So what I want to do is pop up my folder, and where I stored first app, I want to show you all the stuff that it made behind your back. There is that first thing that always starts the program up, but there's this folder that has more stuff in it. Look at all this other stuff. There's that RESX file, okay? Hey, there's that resources folder, and there's that image. So it's stored in there. And then there's some other folders that I don't want you to really touch, but that has information on the properties. Here's a debug folder with objects, and a lot of this stuff I don't even understand what it is, but just leave it there and don't use it. I want to show you a really cool folder, the bin folder. In the bin folder, there's a folder called debug, and in there it also makes an executable for you. So let me just press this for a second. Hey, there's my program working away. Fully in right. So that's sometimes what you get when you buy a program. You get the executable. They don't want to show you how they wrote the code, but they have this file that's compressed, compiled, that allows you to execute the program and make it work. So that's kind of neat too. So all of that is going on behind your back when you make a program in C#. And that's sort of our first taste for it in our introductory lesson. Okay, so I hope I didn't go too fast, but if you think you want a refresher, just go back through the video again and watch some of the key highlights. Okay, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next lecture.